The strain of the pandemic seen from a few new angles tonight, through the eyes of lab techs struggling to keep up with the frantic pace of testing, and from crisis line workers, often the last thing standing between a Coloradan and the end of their life. An analysis of how Denver police handled those protests that turned into riots also suggests what might happen next time. Colorado's last prominent Republican in elected office says farewell.
Madam President, this kid from Yuma yields the floor.
He leaves the Senate without saying one key thing. We'll say it because this is next. Colorado's processing tens of thousands of COVID tests a day, and we cheer that widespread testing without always thinking about the people putting in the long hours to make sure that Coloradans get those important test results back as soon as possible. Our Steve Steger talked with the lab workers fighting burnout as well as the pandemic.
The volume of that testing is unlike any volume increase we've ever seen for any of our tests.
Amy Faliano-Hamill says her work days in the lab at UC Health Highlands Ranch Hospital have never been busier.
Especially those patients who are critically ill with COVID are getting all of the tests and often, and their tests are challenging.
There's not too much that surprises you coming to work anymore.
Aaron Squires manages the lab at Skyridge Medical Center.
This COVID pandemic has just added on to what we've already done in healthcare.
Both will tell you they are experiencing a workload like none other in their careers, focusing on both COVID testing and all the other lab work that hospitals already do.
It could be easy to go 10 hours and be like, ooh, I didn't eat anything today.
For a while, it kind of felt like this panic. Like every day I came in and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, like we can do this. And I kind of pep talk myself to get through the day and know that, it's like, just keep your focus on and you'll get through the day. And it's almost like that panic has become such a constant that I don't feel it anymore.
A constant focus that Amy says is draining.
And I feel it after work because I'm exhausted and I don't have the energy to do the things I used to do after work. I just feel like I am, in between either working really hard or trying to get as much rest as possible so I can come in and work really hard the next day. And I'm sure everybody in healthcare is kind of feeling that.
It's that fear of burnout that's leading Aaron to constantly check in with his employees.
I think it's important during this pandemic that we take care of ourselves and we take care of each other. We really emphasize, did you get your breaks? Have you taken your break? Do you need a day off?
Both recognize that this is important work, and that is powering them through.
I don't even know if I will feel the full exhaustion of this until, maybe way down the road when things go back to normal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that.
One of the striking moments in my conversation with Amy was when I asked her if she feels the support like a lot of healthcare workers do from the community. She says she did, but one thing she says, she also feels the criticism about testing when the media and people criticize testing efforts. And she says they are literally doing everything they can with all the resources they have available, Kyle.
Oh boy, I hope that no lab worker thinks that criticism of our testing is on them. That's for the elected jackwagons who can't keep their promises about test volume. That's not them. All right, thank you, Steve. Colorado's statewide mask mandate has been extended by Democratic Governor Jared Polis, extended today for another 30 days. It's not a surprise. It is a setback for Coloradans with beautiful jawlines. Plenty of holiday parties are canceled this year, including those at Colorado's governor's mansion. A claim that's circulating on social media today inaccurately suggested the governor's still planning parties there. I took a closer look this afternoon. It's not true. So what you're seeing out there is a screenshot of a real email from the governor's office to a real business in Douglas County that invites them to participate in holiday parties at the official governor's residence in Denver. It does not specify indoor or outdoor or numbers, but it stressed that everything was dependent on the COVID situation. The screen grab was taken on the day the email arrived, so it says today at the top, and it was posted today by a business in Weld County that's fighting the COVID restrictions. Here's the truth, though. It's an old email. The business owner who originally received it told me that she got it on October 16th. That was back when public health restrictions were lighter. We had about 350 hospitalizations statewide. The governor's office confirms this email was sent back in October, and they said that that any holiday gatherings at the official residence are off for this year. So you had 350 hospitalizations at that point in mid-October. There are 1,629 patients today. We've seen a small drop from yesterday, down more than 200 from this time last week. Attribute that to better treatments and awesome healthcare workers that meant that 241 of our neighbors were discharged or transferred in the last day. One of those to go home is the governor's partner. First Young Marlon Reese went home today. He went into the hospital over the weekend as his COVID symptoms got worse. He got dexamethasone and remdesivir. No supplemental oxygen, according to the governor's office. Now headed home, feeling well. Colorado's latest daily positivity rate for tests is 12.4%. Our 7-day average is just under 12%. That number had been trending down toward the end of November, but it's bumped back up in December, and it's more than double what public health experts would like to see. Colorado added 3,400 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday. It's well under our weekly average of almost 7,300 a day. But look at the way that those numbers are jumping around. That's the reason why we look at the weekly trend, which is trending down. Good news there. COVID-19 vaccine could arrive in Colorado by next week. The Colorado Vaccine Distribution Task Force is preparing for that timeline if the FDA gives emergency approval for Pfizer's COVID vaccine on Thursday. This is the type of vaccine that has to be stored super cold, negative 94 degrees, so it needs special equipment that's not available at every health clinic. There are smaller places, like the Inner City Health Center in Denver, that are preparing for people to come in and ask for that vaccine.
Well, with that vaccine, there are probably only a couple of hospital systems or medical systems that will be able to meet the stringent requirements. And so in that scenario, we will refer our patients.
Getting one of those super cold freezers installed is not easy for small outfits. They cost about $12,000, and you can imagine they're in high demand right now. Vaccine, on the other hand, while in demand, will be given at no charge. The Coloradan who is leading President Trump's effort to overturn the election results now has COVID-19. Rudy Giuliani, who's the other face of the legal team, says that his partner, Colorado's Jenna Ellis, has tested positive. Ellis herself has not confirmed multiple reports of her COVID-19 diagnosis. Giuliani was hospitalized over the weekend with his symptoms. The two of them have been traveling the country, unsuccessfully trying to get courts or Republican elected officials to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's win. Just today, the Supreme Court, without a single justice dissenting, declined to hear a challenge to Biden's win in Pennsylvania. So Ellis claimed election rigging happened in Colorado, too. Biden won here by double digits. She made that claim without any evidence on conservative talk radio here in Colorado. Some Republican state legislators recently asked Democratic House leaders to investigate Colorado's election results. Democratic Speaker Casey Becker wrote back to him today rejecting that, telling those Republicans, quote, "Your own letter doesn't offer any evidence of why an audit is needed," only referring to unsubstantiated rumors. Senator Cory Gardner's Senate career ended with one final act of loyalty to President Trump. The outgoing Republican senator from Colorado has refused to say that President-elect Joe Biden won the election. Gardner has said that asking him who won is a gotcha question. His farewell speech on the Senate floor today was an ode to America's peaceful transitions of power, without any mention of President Trump's loss.
10 years ago, I sat on the floor of the United States House of Representatives as we prepared, some of my colleagues here with me, to be sworn into the 112th Congress. I watched with our daughter Allison patiently sitting by my side as the peaceful transition of power took place, the hallmark of our republic. As the most powerful, constitutionally prescribed member of Congress, the Speaker of the House gave the gavel to a newly elected Speaker, without gunshot or war, peacefully transitioning to a new majority. Today I speak on the Senate floor with a heart of gratitude, that as I leave with a new Congress set to begin, I go home not because of or due to the threat of violence or revolution, but because of that same constitutional governance that has given this country over 2 centuries of strength and certainty.
Senator Gardner's future is unclear. Could be headed for a high-paying gig somewhere in D.C. in the private sector. Could run for office again in Colorado. Next big race up, Democratic Governor Jared Polis up for re-election. That would be an imposing and expensive task in 2022. Gardner's 9-point loss in the Senate race to Democratic Senator-elect John Hickenlooper is the most lopsided loss by an incumbent senator in Colorado in 42 years. The pandemic, the economy, racial tension, a lot to handle this year, and the folks at Colorado's crisis line are helping people carry that weight while trying not to get burned out themselves. And then, a discovery, for once, that wasn't terrible.
We found baseball bats and other kids' toys.
History, hidden inside a home that the owner thought she knew inside and out. Next. Denver Police Department's got a long to-do list to address mistakes made during the police response to the George Floyd protest back in May. Today, Denver's Office of the Independent Monitor released its investigation. The report pointed to what it called significant gaps in the department's use of internal controls, offered 16 recommended changes, like banning the use of rubber ball grenades and requiring the officers working in the field during protests to wear body-worn cameras. Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin said today he agrees with all of the recommendations, though he said it's going to be hard to meet the one that outside law enforcement working protests in Denver needs to abide by DPD's use of force policy.
Now we would be asking officers from multiple departments to learn our policy, to learn our training. We can't dictate that jurisdiction A or jurisdiction B would adhere to this exact policy, but we will be working together to ensure that we can become in compliance with the recommendations.
The Independent Monitor's report also says that officers were not receiving proper tactical and strategic direction when they were working the protests, and that the department has not made enough recent investments in training to properly prepare for the next go-round. The pandemic's pressures can be felt and they can be heard on Colorado's mental health crisis line. Our Jeremy Hohola looks at that barometer of our state's state of mind.
I've been in this work for 3 years. And crisis work is crisis work.
Every day, Richard Camp has listened to people who call Colorado Crisis Services through the state's 800 number.
You don't know what's going to be on the other side of the line.
While housing and finances have always been stressors, Richard says people are calling about job loss and the stress of teaching kids at home while working.
It is difficult work studying human suffering, and it is easy to get burned out.
910 analyzed hotline call data and found our state of mental health is in a desperate state of need. Since 2017, calls to the line are up 55%. Every month since May, more than 20,000 people have called for help. Unprecedented monthly numbers never before seen since the line's creation in 2013. You can see right here in March, when the pandemic hit Colorado, calls to the line spiked big time.
There are times when we've got 5 people waiting for a call because we have this staff. It's just a hard thing.
The head of Colorado Crisis Services says they've hired 60 more people since last year, including a full-time recruiter. With 150 people now on payroll, keeping up is still a challenge with about 800 calls per day.
I'll be really candid. Some of our wait times to get us are longer.
That leads to more disconnections, which are now up 329%. While the average wait time has increased from about 36 seconds to a minute and a half, she wants to assure people someone will eventually connect.
The system is up, our services are effective, and that because of the volume, we may be a little more difficult to reach, and we're still there.
I fit right along with everything that's happening in the world today.
9 News viewer Ray Hill has shared his mental health troubles on our air before.
The trauma, the depression, the anxiety.
He wants to tell anyone listening right now that sharing problems with someone like Richard is a lifeline.
One of the best things you can do for yourself is reach out and talk to someone. Somebody's always willing to listen to you. You don't ever have to feel like you're alone in this.
And what about the counselors themselves?
Crisis work is incredibly difficult. Part of our staffing issues is that people can't hang, as it were.
For Richard, the added work and what's literally on the line has affirmed a true calling among so many calls.
Don't hesitate. Don't even think about it. Just call. Just call.
Jeremy Hohola, 9 News.
once again, another beautiful December day here in Denver. 65 degrees out at DIA. Temperatures running, of course, well above that average. We have one more day before the cooler, more winter-like temperatures return. You can see just a few high-level clouds sitting across northeastern Colorado. Otherwise, the storm track staying well to our north. Tonight, mild at 31 here in Denver. Teens going up in the mountains. High pressure around, but one more day. That cold front will make a line drive into Colorado on Thursday, helping to cool us off. Tomorrow, though, back to the mid-60s we go. 50s and 60s for eastern Colorado, of course, a little cooler up in the high country. A seasonal day on Thursday at 44. We drop into the 30s with some snow Friday. That'll stick around on Saturday, too. A couple of inches here in the city with more up in the mountains.
I encourage anyone to dig in the dirt every chance they get, right?
It's like the plot of a movie. Construction unearths something that's sat undisturbed for more than a century. It's Colorado history, and we'll see it next. Many of us have gotten to know our homes a bit better this year, every square inch of them. But to have a home is a blessing, and doubly so if it's rich in history. A woman in Denver thought that she knew every corner of her place till some Denver water workers made a discovery.
Denver Water is replacing all of the water lines that go from the street into our homes. My name is Kay Marks, and I've lived in this house since 1997. Well, we spent a lot of time in my basement of this wonderful house trying to even find where that joined, where those pipes joined from outside to the inside. Finally, when we did find it, it was behind a closet that had a wall that we went through in a crawl space. It was a treasure trove of Victorian treasures. Probably a lot of it was somebody's junk at some point, but it meant the world to us as we started finding things. We found a postcard that was addressed to this house. It was found along with a beautiful portrait, a photo of a woman who we're guessing lived in the house. Through the magic of the internet, my sister who lives in Washington started digging and found an old Denver city directory, and that's how we connected the postcard with the original owner of the house. And then one of my dear friends got all crazy and did a genealogy on the house. In 24 hours, they knew the whole history of this place. It was pretty amazing. I'll put all that together, put it in a tub, probably put it back there. And if the house isn't at some point, leveled for a high rise, the next 100 years, someone else might enjoy finding it. It's kind of just cool to connect with the past that way. And I always wonder, wherever people go when we're gone, do they know that we're thinking of them right now? That they've been remembered. So yeah, why not dig in the dirt, see what you can dig up in your basement.
Support digging in dirt. That story came to us through the lens of photojournalist Mike Grady. You get the final word as always. Your feedback next. All right, lots of feedback tonight about Steve Steger's story on lab techs and their role. This came into our assignment desk. Somebody said, thanks for the shout out to lab professionals serving through the pandemic. Though we exist behind the scenes, we provide an integral function. And then on Instagram, somebody said, thank you for finally recognizing the laboratory profession. This came from a retired lab scientist who said, I was sad that our often unseen, unappreciated healthcare field was going unacknowledged. Connie wants to know, if the governor and his husband are following their COVID rules, how did they get COVID? Well, because, Connie, no intelligent person has ever told you that precautionary measures are 100%. Still got to be smart. See you next time.